They say you don't notice the end of the world until it's already standing in your living room. For me, it wasn't a living room. It was the Red Creek Travel Plaza, mile marker 412. A 24-hour island of concrete, diesel pumps, and stale coffee in the middle of the Nebraska darkness. I clocked in for the graveyard shift at 10 p.m. on a Tuesday, same as every Tuesday for the last 6 years. The automatic doors slid open with that familiar grinding whoosh, hitting me with the smell of floor wax and frying grease from the diner grill in the back. It was a smell that never really left your clothes, no matter how many times you washed them. The place was quiet, a kind of quiet that feels heavy, like the air pressure is dropping before a storm. My manager, Sarah, was at the main counter counting down the lottery drawer. She looked tired. We all looked tired out here. The fluorescent lights overhead had a way of washing the color out of everyone's face, turning us all into gray ghosts long before any of this actually started. "Register 2 is acting up again," she said, not looking up from the stack of receipts. She was chewing on the end of a pen, a nervous habit she'd picked up recently. "The card reader keeps timing out, takes 3 or 4 tries to get a chip to read. If a trucker gets pissed off, just override it and log the transaction manually." I nodded, sliding behind the counter and tying my apron. "Internet slow?" "Dead slow," she muttered, "and the satellite radio in the diner keeps cutting to static. Probably the storm coming in." She pointed toward the front windows. Outside, beyond the canopy of the gas pumps, the sky was a bruised shade of purple. The forecast had called for snow, a heavy system dropping down from the Dakotas, but the wind shaking the metal signs out on the highway sounded angrier than usual. It was a low, hollow moan that vibrated against the double-paned glass. Sarah grabbed her coat and keys. "I'm out. Don't burn the place down, Elias, and check the walk-in freezer around 2 a.m. The fan belt is squeaking again." "Got it. Drive safe." She paused at the door, hand on the frame, looking out at the darkness. For a second, she hesitated. "Weird night," she whispered, almost to herself. Then the sensors triggered, the doors slid open, and she stepped out into the wind. I watched her taillights fade onto the on-ramp, swallowed by the black void of the interstate. That was the last time I saw her. The first hour was routine. I did the rounds, restocked the cooler with energy drinks, wiped down the hot dog rollers, which were turning slowly, cooking the same 4 withered sausages that had been there since noon, and brewed a fresh pot of dark roast. The plaza acts like a filter for the highway. You get the regulars, long-haul truckers who have specific routes, and you get the tourists, usually blurry-eyed families just trying to make Denver by morning. But tonight, the flow was off. By 11:15, the store was empty. No one at the pumps, no one in the aisles, just the hum of the refrigerators and the clack, clack, clack of the receipt printer jamming on an error code. I stood behind the counter, staring at the security monitors. We had 16 cameras covering the lot, the diesel lanes, the showers, and the back loading dock. The screens were grainy, black and white, flickering every few seconds. On camera 4, the view of the westbound off-ramp, I saw the first sign of trouble. It was a semi-truck, a Peterbilt, sleek and chrome. It came down the ramp way too fast. I watched on the screen as the rig swerved, kicking up a cloud of gravel, and barely missed the guardrail. It didn't slow down for the diesel lanes. It bypassed the fuel pumps entirely and jackknifed into the overflow parking lot at the far edge of the property. Dust settled on the screen. The truck sat there, idling. The headlights stayed on, cutting two bright cones into the darkness. I waited for the driver to get out. Usually they hop out, stretch their legs, maybe check the tires. But the door didn't open. The truck just sat there, rumbling. I went back to stalking cigarettes, trying to ignore the knot tightening in my stomach. You see weird things on the night shift. Drunks, drug deals, people having breakdowns. You learn to mind your own business until they make it your business. At 11:40, the phone rang. A landline call. That was rare. Most people just used their cells. I picked it up. Red Creek Plaza, this is Elias. Static. Thick, wet static, like someone crumpling harsh paper directly into the mouthpiece. "Hello?" I asked. A voice cut through the noise. It was distant, breathless. A woman. "Blocked. They're standing on the... Tell them not to stop. Mile marker 390. "Ma'am, I can't hear you clearly. Are you stranded?" "Don't look at the..." The line clicked dead. Then the dial tone. I stared at the receiver for a long moment before hanging up. Mile marker 390 was about 20 miles west of us. If there was a wreck or a blockage there, traffic would be backing up soon. We'd get slammed with diverted cars. I started prepping for a rush. I brewed 2 more pots of coffee. I pulled extra sandwiches from the back fridge. But the rush didn't come. Midnight passed. Then 12:30. The highway remained completely silent. No headlights passing in the distance, no roar of engines. It was as if the artery of the country had been clamped shut. At 12:45, the automatic doors hissed open. I jumped, spilling a little coffee on the counter. A man walked in. He was wearing a heavy flannel jacket and a trucker hat pulled low. It was Big Sal. I knew him. He ran a recurring route carrying frozen meat from Omaha to Salt Lake. Usually, Sal was the loudest guy in the room, always had a joke, always complained about the price of diesel. Tonight, Sal didn't look at me. He walked straight to the back of the store, toward the restrooms. His walk was stiff, shoulders hunched up around his ears. "Hey, Sal," I called out, trying to keep my voice casual. "Roads getting bad out there?" He stopped near the magazine rack. He didn't turn around. He just stood there, staring at a display of car air fresheners. "Sal?" He turned his head slowly. His face was the color of old ash. Sweat was beading on his forehead, despite the fact that it was freezing outside. His eyes were wide, rimmed with red, darting around the room like he was looking for an exit that didn't exist. "Don't go out there, Elias," he rasped. His voice sounded like he'd been screaming for hours, hoarse and broken. "What's going on, Sal? Is there a pileup?" He walked to the counter, movements jerky. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a wad of cash, 5s, 10s, 20s, and slammed it on the glass. "Gas, pump 5, all of it." "Sal, pump 5 is diesel. Are you..." "I switched rigs," he interrupted. He was vibrating, a low tremor running through his whole body. "Just turn the pump on, please." I keyed in the authorization. "Okay, it's on. You all right, man? You look sick." He leaned in close. I could smell him. He smelled like copper and sour sweat. He whispered, "I saw them. Mile marker 400. A bus. A Greyhound. It was tipped over." "An accident?" "No." Sal shook his head violently. "The passengers. They were outside. They were tearing at the tires with their hands. They were tearing at the metal." He looked at the glass doors, terror in his eyes. "They didn't look cold, Elias.
They were in the snow in t-shirts, and they didn't look cold. He turned and ran out the door. I watched him sprint to a beat-up sedan at Pump 5, not a rig. He began fueling, his head on a swivel, checking the darkness every 2 seconds.
I locked the front door. It wasn't company policy. Corporate would fire me if they knew. But the look in Sal's eyes, that wasn't drunk, that wasn't high, that was primal fear. I went back to the security monitors. The lot was still mostly empty, except for Sal's car and the jackknifed truck in the overflow lot. I zoomed in on the truck again. Movement. The driver's side door of the truck was open now, hanging loose on its hinges. The cab was empty. I scanned the other cameras. Camera 6 covered the space between the main building and the diesel pumps. It was a shadowy corridor where the trash dumpsters sat. There was a figure standing by the dumpsters. It was a man. He was wearing a high-visibility vest, torn at the shoulder. He was standing perfectly still, facing a brick wall, just staring at the bricks, nose almost touching the masonry. I grabbed the store phone and dialed the local sheriff's dispatch. Beep, beep, beep. The fast busy signal. The lines weren't just down, they were overloaded. I tried to pull up the news on the store computer. The browser loaded painfully slowly. A text-only version of a major news site finally popped up. The headline was in bold black text. Civil unrest reported in multiple cities. National Guard activated. Shelter-in-place advisories for Chicago, Denver, Omaha, Kansas City. Omaha, that was 3 hours east. Denver was 5 hours west. We were right in the middle. Bang! A sudden, sharp impact against the front glass. I spun around. A woman was standing outside the locked sliding doors. She was young, maybe 20, wearing a college sweatshirt and pajama bottoms. She wasn't wearing shoes. Her feet were blue against the concrete. She slammed her open palm against the glass again. Bang! She mouthed the word, "Help." I hesitated. The story Sal told me, people tearing at metal, flashed in my mind. But this was a kid. She was freezing. I unlocked the door and slid it open just enough for her to squeeze through. She stumbled in, collapsing onto the floor mat. She was shivering so hard her teeth were audibly clicking. Hey, you're okay," I said, kneeling but keeping a safe distance. "Are you hurt?" She looked up at me. Her eyes were clear, scared but clear. She wasn't one of them, whatever they were. My dad, he stopped the car." "Where?" Just by the exit ramp. He saw someone lying in the road. He got out to help." She started crying, hyperventilating. "He got out, and the man on the ground, he just bit him. And then Dad..." She stopped. Her eyes locked onto something behind me. I turned around. The back door to the loading dock. It was a heavy steel door, usually locked from the inside with a slide bolt, but I had opened it earlier to take out the trash, and I couldn't remember if I slid the bolt back. The handle on the steel door turned slowly, metal grinding against metal. The girl scrambled backward, crab-walking across the linoleum, pushing herself into the aisle of chips and candy. "Lock it! Please lock it!" I ran toward the back. The layout of the store was a giant square. The counter was in the front, the diner to the left, the bathrooms in the back right, and the loading dock door directly rear center. I had to cross 30 feet of open floor. The handle stopped turning. Silence. I stood there, 10 feet from the door, holding a box cutter I'd grabbed from the counter. My heart was hammering against my ribs so hard I thought it would crack a bone. Then, a sound. Not a bang, not a scream. A scratch. Long, slow fingernails dragging down the painted steel of the door.
Skirt. Then a voice, low, muffled by the heavy door. Elias. It wasn't a question, it was a statement. It was Sarah's voice.
I froze. "Sarah?" I called out. My voice cracked. "Sarah, is that you?" "Open," she mumbled. But tone was wrong. Sarah had a sharp, quick way of speaking. This was slurry, like her mouth was full of water. "Cold, Elias. Open." I can't," I stammered. "Sarah, look at the camera. I need to see you." There was a camera mounted right above the loading dock outside. I backed up, keeping my eyes on the door, and retreated behind the counter to check the monitor. I pulled up camera 9. Sarah was standing there, but she wasn't wearing her coat anymore. She was in her uniform shirt, which was torn open down the front. Her skin was pale, not just cold pale, but waxen like butcher paper. She was leaning her forehead against the steel door, but the worst part was her right arm. It was hanging at a wrong angle, twisted backward at the elbow, swinging loosely as she shifted her weight. She didn't seem to notice it. She wasn't looking at the camera. She was staring at the door handle. Then she stopped leaning. She took a step back. She looked up, not at the camera, but at the transom window above the door, a small rectangular window, maybe 12 inches high, too small for a person. She opened her mouth, her jaw unhinged, dropping impossibly low, stretching the skin of her cheeks until it tore. A sound came out of the speakers on my monitor. It wasn't a scream. It was a high-pitched, rhythmic clicking sound. Click, 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 like a dolphin or a bat using echolocation. On the screen, I saw movement behind her. From the shadows of the loading dock, 3 more figures stepped into the light. They were dressed in varying clothes, a suit, a mechanic's jumpsuit, a parka. They all stopped. They all looked up at the transom window. They all opened their mouths. Click, click, click. The sound vibrated through the glass. It wasn't random. They were signaling. "Get away from the windows," I shouted to the girl. Before she could move, the lights in the parking lot flickered. The big, buzzing halogen lamps that illuminated gas pumps surged once, shining blindingly bright, and then popped. Darkness swept over the forecourt. The only light left was the red neon glow of the Red Creek Plaza sign and the dim emergency strip lights inside the store. In the sudden gloom outside, I saw them. Dozens of them. They weren't walking from the highway anymore. They were standing in the parking lot, a legion of silhouettes against the snow. And every single one of them turned their heads toward the store at the exact same time. The phone on the counter rang again. I stared at it. It rang once, twice. I picked it up, my hand shaking so bad I almost dropped it. "Red Creek?" I whispered. A voice on the other end, clear this time, clinical, male. "This is the Emergency Broadcast System automated dialer. Do not exit the building. Secure all entry points. Do not respond to vocalizations from outside. I repeat, do not respond to vocalizations. They mimic human speech. They remember names. If you are hearing this, you are in a contagion zone." I looked at the monitor. Sarah, or the thing that used to be Sarah, lifted her good hand and pointed at the back door. "Elias," she said, her voice coming through the steel, clear as day now, no longer slurrying. It sounded exactly like her happy morning shift voice. "Elias, the fan belt is squeaking. Let me in to fix it." I dropped the phone. The first glass pane at the front of the store shattered. The sound of safety glass shattering isn't like in the movies. It doesn't tinkle. It crashes. It sounds like a dump truck dropping a load of gravel onto a frozen lake. When that front pane gave way, the wind hit us first. A blast of sub-zero Nebraska air swept through the store, instantly killing the heat. It sent bags of chips tumbling off the racks and swirled the napkins from the counter into little white tornadoes. "Move!" I yelled, grabbing the girl, Maya, she'd tell me later, by the arm. She was frozen, staring at the empty frame of the door where the glass used to be. A hand was gripping the metal frame, a gray, long-fingered hand. I didn't wait for her to process it. I yanked her hard enough to bruise, pulling her over the counter. We scrambled back, past the cigarette racks, toward the narrow hallway that led to the manager's office and the secure inventory cage. "Where are we going?" she screamed, her feet slipping on the slick floor. "Office," I shouted back. "Steel door." We hit the hallway just as I heard the second pane of glass go. Crash! I shoved her into the office and slammed the door behind us. I threw the deadbolt, then the thumb lock, then I wedged a heavy filing cabinet against it. The office was small, maybe 8 by 8. A desk, a safe, a wall of monitors, and a small sliver of a window covered by cheap plastic blinds that looked out onto the sales floor. The lights in here were still on, a separate backup circuit from the main floor, but I killed them immediately. "Don't make a sound," I whispered, pressing a finger to my lips. "Get under the desk." Maya crawled into the leg space under the cheap particle board desk, pulling her knees to her chest. She was shaking so hard the desk vibrated against my leg. I stood in the dark, pressing my eye to the gap in the blinds. The sales floor was bathed in the eerie red glow of the emergency exit signs and the flickering strobes of the alarm system, which had finally decided to kick in. A silent alarm, just flashing white light. Flash, darkness, flash, darkness. In the strobe light, I saw them enter. They didn't run. That was the first thing that didn't make sense. Sal had said they were tearing at tires, wild and fast, but these things moved with a terrifying, fluid grace. 3 of them stepped over the broken glass threshold. One was wearing a suit, tattered at the legs. One was in a mechanic's jumpsuit. The third was a woman in a floral dress, but she was missing one shoe, and her jaw was hanging loose, swinging slightly with every step. They stopped in the middle of the aisle. They tilted their heads. Click, click, click. The sound cut through the heavy door of the office. It was louder now that they were inside. It wasn't just coming from their mouths. It sounded like they were grinding their teeth together or popping the cartilage in their throats. The one in the mechanic's jumpsuit walked over to the coffee station. I watched, breath held, as it reached out a hand. It didn't grab a cup. It touched the metal coffee urn. It ran its fingers along the stainless steel, caressing it. Then it turned its head sharply toward the hallway where we were hiding.
My heart stopped. I ducked below the window line, sliding down the wall until I was sitting on the floor next to the desk. I could hear them out there, the soft scuff-scuff of shoes dragging on linoleum, the crinkle of a chip bag being stepped on. "Are they coming?" Maya whispered. Her voice was barely a breath. "Shh," I hissed. I reached up and pulled the keyboard of the security terminal down to the floor. The monitor array was mounted high on the wall, glowing with a dull blue light. I angled myself so I could see the screens without standing up. Most of the cameras were useless now, pointing at darkness or static. But camera 3, the wide-angle fisheye lens over the register, was working. There were 6 of them inside now. They were spreading out. They weren't looting. They weren't eating the food. They were searching, systematically. One was checking the diner booths. Another was looking behind the counter where I had just been standing. Then, on the screen, I saw Sarah. She walked in last. She still had that twisted arm, dangling uselessly. She walked straight to the register. She stood exactly where she had stood every night for 10 years. She looked down at the lottery machine. Then she spoke. Her voice came through the office door, not through the speakers this time. It was muffled, but unmistakably her. "Total comes to $45, Sarah's voice said. It was cheerful, professional. "Do you have a rewards card?" Maya clamped her hands over her ears and squeezed her eyes shut. "Did you find everything okay tonight?" Sarah asked the empty air. The other figures in the store stopped moving. They all turned towards Sarah. It was like a pack of wolves deferring to an alpha. Or, no, not an alpha, a beacon. Sarah hit the counter with her good hand. Bang! "Register 2 is acting up," she said, but the tone changed. It went from cheerful to angry, then to a deep guttural growl that didn't sound human at all. "Acting up, acting up, up." The last word was a shriek, a short, sharp bark of noise that shattered the illusion of humanity. They started moving again, faster this time. The mechanic moved toward the back hallway, our hallway. I scrambled to my feet, terrified, looking for a weapon. The office was full of paperwork, not guns. I found a heavy metal stapler and a fire extinguisher mounted on the wall. I grabbed the extinguisher. "Maya," I whispered, "if they come in, I'm going to spray them. You run. There's a vent in the ceiling of the inventory cage. You have to climb the shelves." "I can't leave you," she sobbed. "You can and you will. Look at me." I grabbed her shoulder. "They aren't people. Do you understand? That isn't my boss out there. It's a recording." Thump. Something bumped against the office door. We both froze. A fingernail scratched the wood. Skirt. "Elias?" It was a man's voice this time, deep, gravelly. I recognized it instantly. It was Sal. "Elias, open up. I got the gas." I stared at the door handle. It jiggled, locked. "Come on, buddy. It's cold. My hands are cold." Then the voice shifted. It glitched. "My hands are tearing at the tires. Tearing. The voice dissolved into that clicking sound. Click, 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 click. Then a heavy impact, a shoulder slamming into the wood. The filing cabinet I'd wedged against the door shifted an inch. Slam. "Open it," Sal roared. It wasn't a request anymore. It was a command, layered with a frequency that made my teeth ache. I pulled the pin on the fire extinguisher. I signaled Maya to get back. Slam. The wood around the deadbolt splintered. One more hit and they were in. I braced myself. But the hit didn't come. Instead, a loud, piercing noise erupted from the front of the store, a high-pitched electronic squeal. It was the grill alarm in the diner, the one that went off if the grease trap got too hot. I had forgotten to turn the fryers off when I locked up. The scratching at the door stopped. I risked a glance at the monitor. On the screen, the figures were turning. The noise was attracting them. They were drawn to it like moths. All of them, including Sal and Sarah, turned and shuffled rapidly toward the diner area, away from the hallway. "They're distracted," I breathed. "Maya, listen to me. We have maybe 30 seconds. "To do what?" "To move. We can't stay here. This door won't hold another round." "Where to go?" "The cooler," I said. "The walk-in beer cooler. The walls are 6 inches of insulated steel. The door latches from the inside. It's the strongest room in the building." "But it's freezing in there," she said. "Better cold than them," I said. "On my mark."
I waited until the monitor showed the pack clustering around the screaming fryer alarm in the diner. "Go." I shoved the filing cabinet aside. It scraped loudly on the floor. Screech! On the monitor, every single head snapped back toward the office. "Run!" I yelled. I threw the door open.
We burst into the hallway. We had to cross the back of the store, past the bathrooms, to get to the cooler supply doors. It was maybe 20 feet. "Hey!" Sarah screamed from the diner. "Hey! Customer! Customer service!" They charged. I saw them coming out of the shadows, limbs flailing, not stiff anymore, but terrifyingly loose. They moved like spiders, low and fast. Maya slipped on a spilled energy drink. She went down hard. "Get up!" I grabbed her jacket and hauled her to her feet. The mechanic was on us. He lunged, mouth open, rows of teeth looking gray and jagged. I swung the fire extinguisher. Clang! It connected with his head. It felt like hitting a bag of wet cement. He didn't even grunt. He just stumbled back, his neck twisting at a sickening angle, and immediately tried to step forward again. No pain, no shock. We reached the cooler door. I yanked the heavy handle. It sucked open with a hiss of magnetic seals. I shoved Maya inside. I stepped in and grabbed the handle to pull it shut. A hand, Sarah's hand, shot into the gap. Her fingers curled around the door frame. Her face appeared in the crack, pressed against the metal. Her eyes were completely black. No whites, just dilated pupils swallowing the iris. "Fan belt," she whispered, spraying spit onto my face. "Squeaking." I slammed my heel into her forearm. I felt the bones snap. She didn't let go. I kicked again, harder. "Let go!" She just smiled, a wide, tearing smile. I braced my back against the shelving unit inside the cooler and kicked with both feet, putting every ounce of adrenaline I had into it. The boot connected with her face. She flew back. I slammed the heavy insulated door. I engaged the internal safety latch. Thud. We were in darkness, absolute pitch black. The only sound was the hum of the cooling fans and our own ragged breathing. I fumbled for my phone to use the flashlight, but my hands were shaking so bad I dropped it. "Maya, I'm here. I'm here." I found the phone. I clicked the light on. We were in the beer cave. Rows and rows of Bud Light and Coors surrounded us. The air was frigid, hovering around 34 degrees. "Are you bit?" I asked, scanning her. "Did they touch you?" "No, I don't think so. My knee. I banged my knee." I checked myself. Bruised, winded, but no bites. We sat on cases of soda, huddled together for warmth. Outside the thick steel door, the banging started. Not rhythmic this time, chaotic, like they were throwing themselves against the metal. But this was an industrial cooler. It was built to withstand a forklift impact. They weren't getting in, but we weren't getting out.
Time passed. I don't know how long. Maybe 20 minutes. The banging eventually stopped. The silence returned. But it wasn't empty silence. Through the ventilation fan grate above us, a small square duct leading to the outside compressor, I could hear the wind and something else. Voices. Not the aggressive screaming from before. These were conversational, low, muffled. "Did you check the oil?" one voice asked. It sounded like an old man. "Yeah, oil's good. Tires are low," another voice replied. A young woman. They were role-playing. They were out there, walking around the store, repeating phrases they had heard in this place, like echoes trapped in a canyon. "Maya," I whispered, turning off the flashlight to save battery. "We have a problem." "Aside from the monsters?" she asked, her voice dry. "The temperature," I said. "It's 34 degrees in here. We're wet from the snow. Hypothermia will set in within a few hours if we don't find a way to warm up." "Can we turn the cooler off?" "The controls are on the outside," I said. "But there's a maintenance hatch in the ceiling.
It leads to the compressor crawl space between the drop ceiling and the roof. I shone the light up. Sure enough, there was a square panel. If we can get up there, I said, we can move across the store above them, maybe get to the utility closet. The breaker box is there. We could cut the power to the automatic doors, lock them down properly, or maybe get to the roof. The roof? Maya asked. What's on the roof? A ladder, I said, and a view of the highway. If help is coming, that's where we'll see it. I started stacking cases of beer to build a staircase. Help me with these, I said. As we lifted a case of Miller Lite, my phone buzzed. I almost dropped it. I had 0 bars of service. How could it buzz? I looked at the screen. It wasn't a text. It wasn't a call. It was a Bluetooth connection request. Pairing request from Sarah's iPhone. I stared at it. Bluetooth range is only about 30 feet. She's right outside the door, I whispered. Then a new notification popped up. A file transfer request. An audio file. Accept? My finger hovered over the screen. Morbid curiosity is a dangerous thing. I tapped accept. The file played instantly on speaker. It was a recording of me. It was my voice, recorded from 5 minutes ago when I shouted in the hallway. Move! Office! Steel door! Better cold than them! The recording stopped. Then Sarah's voice came through the phone speaker, live, distorted, as if she was speaking directly into her phone microphone on the other side of the wall. Better cold than us. She laughed, a dry, clicking laugh. We are coming up, Elias. The vent. We know about the vent. I looked up at the ceiling hatch. Something slammed onto the metal roof of the cooler, right above our heads. They weren't just outside the door. They were in the ceiling crawl space already.
There's a specific sound that thin sheet metal makes when it starts to buckle under weight. It's a groan, a low, vibrating protest. We heard it directly above our heads. The ceiling of the walk-in cooler wasn't concrete. It was just insulated paneling, aluminum skin over foam, strong enough to hold in the cold, but not designed to hold the weight of bodies. Crunch! A dent appeared in the ceiling panel, right next to the maintenance hatch I had been planning to use. Dust filtered down, sparkling in the beam of my flashlight. They're digging, Maya whispered, her eyes glued to the ceiling. They're trying to come through. I looked at the dent. Then I looked at the heavy steel door we had just barricaded. We were trapped. If we stayed, they would tear through the ceiling and drop on us like rats in a barrel. If we opened the door, Sarah and the others were waiting in the hallway. Turn off the light, I whispered. What? Turn it off, now. She clicked the light off. The darkness was absolute again. Listen, I said. In the dark, the sounds were amplified. Above us, the scraping and pounding were getting violent, metal tearing, reek, like a can opener on a giant tin can. But at the door, silence. They moved, I realized. They're pack hunters. They know we're in here, and they know the door is locked. They all went up. They're all on the roof of the cooler, trying to get in the back way. So the door is clear? Maya asked. Maybe, or maybe one stayed behind to catch us, but we can't stay here. I stood up, feeling my way to the door handle. The latch was cold enough to burn my palm. When I open this, I whispered, we stay low, crawl. If the lights are still strobing out there, keep your eyes down. Don't look at them. If you make eye contact, they fixate. Where are we going?
"The roof is out," I said. "If they're in the crawl space, they control the upper level. We have to go to the basement." "This place has a basement?" "A storm shelter," I said. "Tornado country. Access is behind the diner counter." I gripped the internal safety release. 1, I counted. 2. Crash! Above us, a foot, shod in a heavy work boot, punched through the ceiling panel. Foam insulation rained down. A gray hand reached through the hole, grasping blindly. 3! I shoved the cooler door open.
We spilled out into the back hallway. I expected an ambush. I had the fire extinguisher raised, ready to swing. The hallway was empty, but the noise was horrific. Above us, inside the drop ceiling tiles, it sounded like a stampede of cattle, thumping, dragging, scrambling. They were all converging on the top of the cooler. "Go," I hissed. We scrambled on hands and knees, moving away from the cooler, back toward the main sales floor. The air out here was warmer, but it smelled wrong. It smelled like ozone and burnt hair, and underneath that, the copper tang of blood. We reached the end of the hallway and peeked around the corner into the main store. The emergency strobes were still flashing. Flash, dark, flash, dark. It was like watching a slideshow of a nightmare. In the flashes, I saw them. The store wasn't empty. While the hunting pack was in the ceiling, the others, the ones who weren't hunting, were performing. It was the most terrifying thing I had seen all night. There were maybe 10 of them. One was standing at the magazine rack. In the strobe light, I saw him pick up a magazine, look at it, put it down, pick it up, look at it, put it down. A perfect loop. But he was holding the magazine upside down. Another one, a woman in a torn tracksuit, was standing in the middle of the aisle holding a bag of chips. She wasn't eating them. She was crushing the bag. Crinkle, then smoothing it out. Crinkle, smoothing it out. They were mimicking the motions of being human, but without the soul, like a record skipping on a scratch. "The diner," I whispered to Maya. "Stay behind the shelves." We crawled past the candy aisle, past the soda fountains. Flash. I saw Sal. He was standing at the coffee station. He was pouring hot coffee onto the floor, just holding the pot upside down, watching the brown liquid splash over his boots. His face was blank, slack. Flash. He turned his head. We froze. He wasn't looking at us. He was looking at the ceiling. The noise of the pack breaking into the cooler had stopped. They must have realized the box was empty. Sal's mouth opened. Click. Just one. A scout signaling the others. "Move fast," I whispered. We abandoned stealth. We sprinted the last 20 feet to the diner counter. I vaulted over the laminate counter. Maya scrambled over behind me. "The trap door," I said, ripping up the rubber floor mat near the grill. Underneath was a heavy wooden hatch with a recessed ring pull. It hadn't been opened in years. It was sealed with grime and old grease. I hooked my fingers through the ring and pulled. It didn't budge. "Help me!" Maya grabbed the ring with me. Out on the sales floor, the rhythm changed. The shuffling stopped. The crinkling stopped. Screech! The sound of ceiling tiles exploding. I looked up. Above the candy aisle, the drop ceiling collapsed. 3 figures fell out of the sky, landing in a heap of dust and wire. They hit the floor and immediately untangled themselves, limbs snapping into place with unnatural speed. They saw us. "Pull!" I screamed. We heaved. The grease seal cracked. The door flew open. Beneath was a concrete staircase dropping into darkness. "Down! Go down!" Maya jumped into the hole. I followed her, grabbing the edge of the hatch to slam it shut.
As I pulled the heavy wood down, I saw Sal. He had leaped over the counter, his face a mask of absolute fury. I slammed the hatch. Boom! I threw the slide bolt. A split second later, a body impacted the wood from above. The dust rained down on us. Thud, thud, thud. They were hammering on the door. I backed down the stairs, flashlight sweeping the space.
The storm shelter was small, maybe 20 feet by 20 feet. Concrete walls, concrete floor, stacks of old cardboard boxes, promotional signage from 1998, and a few folding chairs. It was dead silent down here. The thick concrete muffled the screaming from upstairs until it was just a dull vibration. "We're safe," Maya breathed, sliding down the wall to sit on the floor. "They can't get through concrete." "For now," I said. I swept the light around the room. In the corner, there was a workbench, and on the workbench, an old CB radio base station, the kind truckers used back in the day before cell phones took over everything. I rushed over to it. It was dusty, but the red power light was glowing. It was wired into the building's emergency generator circuit. "Does it work?" Maya asked. I turned the squelch dial. Static hissed through the speaker, a beautiful white noise sound. "The antenna is on the roof," I said, "if the line hasn't been cut." I grabbed the microphone. "Breaker 19, Breaker 19. This is Red Creek Plaza. Is anyone out there? Over." Static. I tried again. "Mayday! Mayday! We are trapped in the storm cellar. We have hostiles inside the building. Is anyone copying this frequency?" Silence. Then, through the static, a voice. It wasn't a dispatcher. It wasn't police. "Keep moving. Don't look at the lights. If you see the lights, turn around." It was a trucker. The signal was weak, drifting in and out. "This is Red Creek," I shouted. "I can hear you. Who is this?" "Mile marker 405. I'm in the sleeper cab. They're outside. They're knocking on the doors." 405. That was 7 miles east. "Driver," I said, "this is Elias at the plaza. Are you safe?" The voice on the radio changed. It became clearer, closer. "Elias?" I froze. Yeah, it's me. "Elias, the fan belt is squeaking." I dropped the microphone. It hit the desk with a clatter. The voice on the radio laughed. It wasn't a human laugh. It was a loop of recorded laughter, playing over and over. Ha, 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 ha. Then the clicking started over the radio speakers. Click, click, click. "They're on the channel," I whispered, backing away from the radio. "They aren't just mimicking voices. They're mimicking signals. They're in the network." Maya stood up, her face pale. "Elias!" "What?" She pointed to the ceiling of the storm shelter. Running along the concrete ceiling were thick bundles of conduit, pipes carrying the electrical wires and data cables from the basement up to the main store. One of the pipes was vibrating. We watched as a small amount of gray dust drifted down from where the pipe entered the concrete ceiling. "They can't fit in a pipe," I said. "That's a 2-inch conduit. Impossible." But then I remembered the way the mechanic moved after I hit him, the way Sarah's jaw unhinged, the way they fell from the ceiling without breaking bones. They weren't stiff. They were pliable. A finger, just a single gray, impossible finger, poked out of the conduit hole, wiggling into the room, then another, then a hand, squeezing through a space no wider than a soda can, bones crunching and reforming as it pushed through. It wasn't a solid body anymore. It was a semi-solid mass of meat and malice pouring itself into our sanctuary.
The tunnel.
I said. What tunnel? Maya screamed, backing into the corner. The old fuel line access, I said, my brain racing through the blueprints I had seen once during an inspection. There's a maintenance tunnel that runs from here to the underground diesel tanks out in the lot. It has an exit manhole near the pumps. I ran to the back wall, shoving aside stacks of old boxes. There it was, a round steel hatch bolted into the wall about 3 feet off the ground, painted yellow, stenciled, "Confined space, authorized personnel only." "Help me turn the wheel!" We grabbed the iron wheel of the hatch. It was rusted tight. Behind us, the thing in the ceiling had dropped to the floor. It was the woman in the floral dress. She hit the ground like a sack of wet laundry, lying in a heap. Then, with a sickening series of pops, her limbs snapped back into alignment. She stood up. She smiled. "Open it!" I roared, putting my foot against the wall for leverage. Maya screamed as the woman lunged. The wheel gave. Screech! I spun it. The latches disengaged. I kicked the hatch open. A blast of freezing, gasoline-smelling air hit us. The tunnel was dark, round and narrow, just a concrete tube carrying pipes. "In! Go!" I shoved Maya into the tube. The woman in the dress grabbed my ankle. Her grip was like a vice grip, cold, hard. I kicked back, my heel striking her in the face. Her nose flattened, but she didn't let go. She started to pull. She was impossibly strong. She was dragging me back into the room. I clawed at the edge of the hatch. "Maya!" Maya turned back. She didn't scream. She grabbed a heavy wrench that was lying just inside the tunnel entrance. Some maintenance worker had left it there years ago. She swung it with both hands. Crack! She hit the woman's hand. The fingers didn't break. They shattered like porcelain. The grip loosened. I scrambled into the tunnel. Maya grabbed the internal handle of the hatch and pulled. The woman threw herself at the opening, her face pressing into the gap, teeth snapping inches from my nose. We pulled together. Clang! The hatch slammed shut. I spun the locking wheel from the inside. We lay there in the dark, panting, lying in puddles of condensation and old oil. We were under the parking lot now. "Keep moving," I said, my voice shaking. "We can't stop. If they find the other end..." We crawled. The tunnel was claustrophobic. My shoulders brushed the sides. Pipes hissed next to my ear. It was about 50 yards to the manhole access near the diesel pumps. It took us 5 minutes, but it felt like 5 years. Finally, I saw ladder rungs ahead, leading up to a flat metal circle. A tiny rim of light showed around the edge. I climbed the ladder and pushed against the manhole cover. It was heavy, cast iron, probably 50 pounds, but adrenaline is a hell of a drug. I heaved. The cover slid aside with a grate of metal on asphalt. Snow fell onto my face. I pulled myself up and out. We were outside. The wind was howling, biting into our skin instantly. We were in the middle of the diesel lanes, under the canopy. The plaza building was 50 yards away. The windows were dark now, except for the strobe lights flashing inside like a heartbeat. "My car," Maya said, pointing. "It's right there at the pump." Her car was a small Honda Civic. It was parked at pump 4. The driver's door was open. "Keys?" I asked. "In the ignition," she said. "My dad, he left them." "We make it for the run," I said. "On 3. We stood up, and then the floodlights turned on. Not the plaza lights, headlights, high beams, 12 feet off the ground. A massive snowplow outfitted with a steel wedge blade was sitting at the entrance to the truck stop. It hadn't been there before. The engine revved, a deep diesel roar that shook the ground. It wasn't here to plow the snow. The driver's cab was dark, but I could see a silhouette. It was wearing a hat, a trucker hat. "Sal?" I whispered. The plow dropped its blade. Sparks flew as steel hit asphalt. It gunned the engine and accelerated, straight towards us.
A snowplow is a weapon of mass displacement. It's 20 tons of steel and hydraulics designed to push mountains aside. When it's bearing down on you at 40 miles an hour, you don't think. You don't plan. Your lizard brain just screams, "Move!" "Dive!" I yelled, my voice swallowed by the roar of the diesel engine.
I threw myself to the left, tackling Maya into a bank of dirty plowed snow piled up against a concrete bollard. The impact was deafening. Crunch! Screech! The steel blade of the plow caught the rear bumper of Maya's Honda Civic. It didn't just hit the car, it disintegrated it. The small sedan crumpled like a soda can, glass exploding into a diamond mist. The plow carried the wreckage forward, grinding it against the asphalt, sparks showering over us like fireworks. The ground shook. I felt the vibration in my teeth. We were covered in snow and slush. I pulled Maya's head down as a piece of the Honda's side mirror whistled past my ear, embedding itself in the snowbank behind us. The plow slammed the remains of the car into the concrete base of Pump 4. The pump shattered. The overhead canopy groaned as the impact shook the support columns. "Run!" I hauled Maya up. "The fuel island! Get between the pumps!" We scrambled over the slick pavement, slipping on diesel fuel and ice. Behind us, the plow gears ground loudly. Grrr, chunk. Sal shifted into reverse. The backup beeper was broken or disconnected. There was only the whine of the transmission. He backed up, dragging the twisted metal carcass of the Honda with him, clearing the lane for another run. The fuel island was a long concrete strip with 4 diesel pumps spaced out. The pumps were heavy industrial units, reinforced with steel guards. They offered cover, but only if we kept moving. "He's turning!" Maya screamed, pointing. Through the swirling snow, I saw the twin beams of the headlights swing around. Sal was drifting the massive truck. It wasn't the clumsy driving of a drunk. It was precise, calculated. He knew exactly how to use the weight of the rig. He lined up on us again. "He's gonna ram the pumps," I realized. "He's trying to flush us out." "Elias, look!" Maya grabbed my parka. She wasn't pointing at the truck. She was pointing at the store. The front of the Red Creek Plaza was fully illuminated by the plow's headlights. The broken windows were gaping maws, and pouring out of them, ignoring the sub-zero wind, ignoring the glass shards, was the pack. They moved on all 4s, then on 2 legs, transitioning between gates with that sickening fluid motion. The mechanic, the woman in the dress, and Sarah. They weren't rushing blindly. They were spreading out in a fan formation, flanking us. We were pinned. The plow in front, the horde behind. "Up," I said, looking at the canopy support pillar next to us. "We have to go up." "Climb the pole?" Maya panicked. "It's smooth metal." "The maintenance ladder," I shouted. "Pump 2 has a roof access ladder bolted to the column. Move!" We sprinted down the length of the fuel island. The plow roared. Sal popped the clutch. The tires spun, finding traction on the sanded concrete, and the beast surged forward. He wasn't aiming for us this time. He was aiming for the column we were running toward. He wanted to bring the roof down. "Faster!" My lungs burned. The cold air felt like swallowing razor blades. We reached the column at Pump 2. The ladder was there, a narrow strip of steel rungs welded to the side, starting about 6 feet off the ground to prevent kids from climbing it. "Jump!" I cupped my hands. Maya stepped into my palms. I heaved her up. She hauled the bottom rung, her feet kicking for purchase. "Go! Go! Go!" She hauled herself up. The roar of the truck was right on top of me. The heat from the radiator washed over my back. I jumped, grabbing the bottom rung just as the steel blade of the plow clipped the concrete bollard below me. Boom! The impact shuddered through the ladder. My grip slipped. My feet dangled in the air. Below me, the plow ground against the column. I looked down. The driver's side window was rolled down. Sal looked up. His face was illuminated by the sparks flying from the metal-on-metal friction. He wasn't screaming. He wasn't raging. His face was perfectly, terrifyingly neutral. He took one hand off the steering wheel and reached out. His fingers brushed the sole of my boot. "Gas," he whispered, his voice audible even over the engine. "Fill it up." I kicked down, stomping on his hand. I felt fingers break, but he didn't recoil. He just stared. "Elias, give me your hand!" Maya was reaching down from above. I lunged upward, grabbing the next rung. I scrambled, knees banging against the steel, pulling myself up out of reach. Sal turned the wheel sharp left, grinding the side of the truck against the pillar, trying to crush me against it. I pulled my legs up into a tuck, just as the side mirror of the semi sheared off against the ladder, inches below my feet. I climbed. 10 feet. 15 feet. I rolled onto the flat, gravel-covered roof of the canopy, just as the entire structure shuddered again.
We lay on the roof, gasping for air. The wind up here was brutal, unobstructed. It whipped the snow into horizontal sheets that stung our eyes. "Are you okay?" I yelled over the wind. Maya nodded, clutching her side. He tried to crush us. He knew exactly what he was doing." "They remember," I said, crawling to the edge and peering over carefully. "They remember how to drive, how to open doors, how to trap us. They aren't zombies, Maya. They're users. They're using the bodies like tools." Below us, the scene was a chaotic ballet. The plow had backed off. Sal was idling the engine, waiting. Around the pumps, the pack had gathered. They were standing in the snow, barefoot. They weren't shivering. They were looking up. 20 pairs of eyes reflecting the red neon light of the Red Creek sign fixed on the edge of the canopy. They couldn't climb the smooth metal pillars. The ladder was the only way up, and it was too high for them to jump to the first rung without a boost. "They're stuck," Maya said, her teeth chattering violently. "For now," I said. "But look." I pointed down. 2 of the infected, the mechanic and another man in a suit, walked over to the base of the ladder column. They crouched down. They interlocked their fingers, making a stirrup. A third infected ran at them, stepped into their hands, and launched himself upward. He missed the bottom rung by inches, clawing at the steel before falling back down. They immediately reset. They adjusted their stance. They were learning, troubleshooting. "We have to block it," I said. I looked around the roof. It was a flat expanse of gravel and tar, dotted with HVAC units and electrical boxes. "There," I pointed to a heavy metal access cover for the electrical junctions. "Help me move this." We dragged the heavy steel plate to the edge of the roof, positioning it directly over the ladder. "When the next one jumps," I said. Below, they launched the third man again. This time, he jumped higher. His fingers hooked the bottom rung. "Now!" We shoved the plate over the edge. It fell 15 feet. It hit the climbing figure square in the shoulder. There was a wet crunch. The figure fell, taking the 2 boosters down with him. They didn't scream. They just tumbled into a pile of limbs and immediately started untangling themselves to try again. "It won't hold them forever," I said, backing away from the edge. But it bought us time. We retreated to the center of the roof, huddling behind a large HVAC unit to break the wind. The adrenaline was fading, and the cold was moving in for the kill. I could feel my fingers getting stiff. My toes were already numb. "We're going to freeze to death up here," Maya said. She was curling into a ball, tucking her hands into her armpits. "We need heat, and we need a way out." I looked at the layout of the plaza from this height. To the south, the highway. It was a river of darkness. The snow had covered the lanes completely. There were shapes out there, lumps in the snow that must have been cars that slid off the road hours ago, but no movement, no lights. To the east,
nothing but wheat fields buried in white. To the west, I squinted. "Maya, look," as said. "About a mile down the access road, there's a faint rhythmic flashing, amber light." "Is it a car?" she asked, not looking up. "It's a tower," I said. "The cellular relay tower on the ridge. The backup generator light is flashing." So, that tower has a maintenance shed, heated, secure, and it has a direct line of sight to the military base in Cheyenne. If the grid is down, that tower is the only thing broadcasting a hardline signal. "It's a mile away, through 4 feet of snow, and them." I looked down at the parking lot. Sal was still in the truck. The pack was still circling the pillars. "We can't walk it," I admitted, "and we can't drive." I looked at the roof of the canopy again. It was long, stretching over the diesel lanes and then connecting, via a covered walkway, to the main store roof. "The store roof," I said. "If we cross over to the main building, we can get to the loading dock side." "What's on the loading dock side?" "The propane tank, the bulk tank for the kitchen, 500 gallons. "You want to blow it up?" "No," I said. "I want to create a distraction, a big one, big enough to draw every single one of those things away from the exit." "And then what?" "And then," I pointed to the far edge of the lot where the overflow parking was, "we run for the one vehicle they haven't touched." "The jackknifed truck?" "No," I shook my head. "The snowmobiles." Maya looked at me. "What snowmobiles?" "In the bed of that pickup truck over there." I pointed to a Ford F-150 buried in a drift near the entrance. It had a trailer. On the trailer were 2 tarp-covered shapes. I saw the guy park it when I came in at 10. He was heading to the mountains.
We began to move. We had to cross the connector, a narrow, corrugated metal walkway that bridged the gap between the fuel island canopy and the main plaza building. It was slick with ice and swayed in the wind. We crawled. Below us, the infected followed. They tracked our movement through the metal grating. I could see their upturned faces, mouths open, snow falling into their throats. Click, click, click. They were communicating our position. We reached the main roof. It was rubberized, less slippery. I moved to the rear edge, looking down at the loading dock. The bulk propane tank sat against the wall, a white pill-shaped giant. "How do we trigger it from up here?" Maya asked. I searched my pockets. Box cutter, dead phone, wallet, keys. "I have a lighter," Maya said. Her voice was small. I looked at her. "I smoke," she said defensively. "Don't tell my dad." Then she stopped, realizing what she said. Her dad was gone. I have a lighter." She pulled a pink Bic lighter from her pocket. "That won't reach," I said. "We need a fuse." I looked at my uniform. Polyester. It melts. It doesn't burn well. "The tar," I said, looking at the roofing patch kit left by some repair crew near the vent stack. There was a bucket of roofing tar and a mop. "It's frozen solid," Maya said. "Not the mop head," I said. "It's cotton, soaked in bitumen." I grabbed the mop. I used the box cutter to shred the handle, leaving me with the sticky, flammable head. "We need to rupture the tank first," I said. I looked around the roof for something heavy. There were loose bricks from the chimney stack crumbling on the east side. "Grab a brick," I said. We carried 3 bricks to the edge. "Aim for the valve assembly. It's brass. If we hit it hard enough, it might shear off. It's old." I dropped the first brick. It missed, clanging off the tank body. The sound drew the pack. They swarmed around the tank below, looking up, confused. "Perfect," I whispered. "Group up." I dropped the second brick. Crack! It hit the regulator pipe. A distinct hiss of high-pressure gas erupted. A white plume of vapor sprayed out, fogging the air below. The infected didn't run. They were curious. One of them, the mechanic, walked right into the gas cloud. He stood there, breathing it in, tilting his head. "Light it," I told Maya. She flicked the bic. The flame danced in the wind, almost dying. She cupped it, trembling. I held the tar-soaked mop head to the flame. It took a second, bubbling, and then, whoosh, it caught. A thick, black, oily flame roared to life. "Get back!" I yelled. I threw the flaming mop over the edge. It fell in slow motion, a comet of fire descending into the white cloud of propane. We turned and dove behind the brick chimney stack.
The explosion wasn't a bang, it was a thump. A sudden, massive displacement of air that punched me in the chest even through the brick wall. The sky turned orange. Heat, glorious, searing heat washed over the roof. Then came the sound. The roar of 500 gallons of liquid propane expanding instantly. We stayed down as debris rained onto the roof. I crawled to the edge and looked over. The back of the store was gone. The loading dock was a crater of fire. The pack, they were burning, but they weren't screaming. That was the worst part. I saw figures engulfed in flames stumbling out of the inferno. They didn't roll on the ground, they didn't flail. They just kept walking, their movements jerky as their muscles cooked until they collapsed. The ones in the front, Sal in the plow, and the group by the pumps were moving. The explosion had drawn them. They were sprinting toward the fire, drawn by the sound and the light. "The front is clear," I yelled. "Go, now!" We ran to the front edge of the roof. There was a drain pipe running down the brick facade. "Slide down." I went first. The pipe rattled but held. I hit the snow and rolled. Maya followed, landing beside me. We sprinted across the parking lot through the knee-deep snow. The pickup truck with the snowmobiles was 50 yards away. My lungs were burning. My legs felt like lead. Behind us, the fire roared. We reached the pickup. The tarp was frozen stiff. I ripped it off. 2 Polaris snowmobiles. "Keys," I prayed. "Please have keys." I jammed a key into the first sled. It turned. I hit the starter. Chug, chug, chug. Nothing. The battery was cold. "Come on," I begged. "Come on." Chug, chug, vroom. The engine caught. A cloud of blue smoke erupted. I didn't bother with the second sled. "Get on." Maya jumped on behind me, wrapping her arms around my waist. I looked back at the plaza. Through the smoke and fire, a shape was emerging. The snowplow. Sal drove it out of the fire. The paint on the truck's hood was blistering. The tires were smoking, but it was still moving. And he saw us. I slammed the throttle. The tread caught the snow. The skis lifted. We shot forward, jumping the curb and rocketed out onto the dark, silent expanse of Interstate 80. I didn't look back. I just aimed for the blinking light on the tower in the distance. There's a specific kind of cold that exists on the back of a snowmobile doing 60 miles an hour in a blizzard. It stops being temperature and starts being physical violence. The wind finds every gap in your zipper, every loose seam in your gloves. It feels like sandpaper stripping the skin off your face. I had the throttle pinned to the handlebar. The engine of the Polaris screamed, a high-pitched 2-stroke whine that sounded like a chainsaw tearing through the night. The headlight bounced violently, cutting a cone of white through the falling snow. Behind me, Maya was screaming something, but the wind tore the words away before I could hear them. Her arms were wrapped so tight around my waist I could barely breathe. Her helmet, which we'd managed to snag from the truck bed at the last second, bumping against the back of my head with every jolt. We were on the interstate, the westbound lanes. It was a graveyard. We wove between abandoned cars. Some were just white mounds, indistinguishable from snowdrifts. Others were fresh wrecks,
doors open, interior lights dead. I saw a minivan slewed sideways, a child's car seat sitting upright in the snow next to it, empty. I checked the side mirror. It was shaking, but I saw it. 2 yellow eyes. The plow. Sal wasn't just following, he was hunting. The massive plow blade sparked against the asphalt as he pushed abandoned cars out of his way like toys. Crash, screech. He was clearing a path, gaining speed. The truck was heavy, sure, but on the flat, ice-slicked highway, that weight gave him momentum. He was doing 70, easy. "He's gaining," I yelled, though I knew she couldn't hear me. The tower was still a mile away, up a steep ridgeline to our right. I needed to get off the highway. The plow was king of the road, but in deep powder it would bog down. "Hold on!" I jerked the handlebars to the right. We hit the shoulder. The snowmobile launched off a plowed bank of snow. For a second, we were airborne, suspended in the black void. Then we slammed down into the ditch. The suspension bottomed out with a sickening clank. Maya cried out, the sled fishtailed, the track spinning wildly in the deep, unpacked powder of the cornfield. I fought the steering. Come on, bite!" The track caught. The nose lifted. We carved a path through the dead, frozen stalks of corn, leaving a trench of churned earth behind us. I looked back. On the highway, the plow slammed on its brakes. It slid sideways, the trailer swinging around, blocking all 3 lanes. Sal couldn't follow us into the ditch. The truck would sink. He stopped. The headlights cut across the field, illuminating us like fugitives in a prison break. He honked the horn. One long, mournful blast. It echoed across the flat plains. Then he turned off the headlights. The darkness out in the field was absolute. Without the ambient light of the plaza or the plow, the world shrunk down to just the 20 feet in front of my headlight. We rode in silence for 5 minutes, the engine droning. My hands were freezing into claws. I couldn't feel the throttle lever anymore. I just kept my thumb pressed by locking my wrist. "The tower!" Maya shouted, leaning forward so her helmet touched my ear. "It's up there!" I looked up. The ridge loomed ahead, a dark, jagged line against the slightly lighter gray of the sky. And there, pulsing steadily, was the amber strobe. It wasn't a cell tower, not a normal one. As we got closer, I saw the structure. It was thick, triangular steel, guy-wired to the ground. At the base, there wasn't just a shed, it was a compound, a concrete block building surrounded by a 10-foot chain-link fence topped with razor wire. This was critical infrastructure, a hardened relay point. "The hill is too steep," Maya warned. She was right. The access road was buried under 5 feet of drift. I had to gun it straight up the incline. "Lean forward," I yelled. "Put your weight over the skis." We hit the slope. The engine bogged down. Wah, 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 wah. The track spun, digging a hole. We were slowing down. "Don't stop! Don't stop!" I rocked the sled, shifting my weight side to side. The cleats grabbed a patch of frozen earth. We lurched upward. 10 yards, 5 yards. We crested the ridge. The wind up here was ferocious. It hit us broadside, nearly tipping the sled over. I steered toward the gate of the compound and killed the engine.
The silence that followed was ringing in my ears. We rolled off the sled, falling into the snow. My legs were jelly. Maya stumbled, ripping her helmet off and vomiting bile into the snow. "We made it," I gasped, crawling toward the gate. "We're here." I reached the chain-link fence. It was heavy-gauge steel. The gate was locked with a heavy padlock. "The key," Maya rasped, wiping her mouth. "Do we have bolt cutters?" "No," I said. I looked at the padlock. It was frozen. I grabbed the snowmobile again. I dragged the front end around, aiming it at the gate. "What are you doing?" "Ramming speed," I said. "Ghost ride." I lined it up. I jammed the throttle open with a piece of ice wedged into the handle. "Stand clear."
I yanked the starter cord. The engine roared to life. The clutch engaged. The snowmobile shot forward. Clang! It hit the center of the double gate, doing 20 miles an hour. The chain snapped. The gate swung inward, screeching on rusted hinges. The snowmobile crashed onto its side inside the compound, engine stalling out. We ran inside. I grabbed the gate and pulled it shut, wrapping the broken chain around the bars as best I could. It wouldn't stop a truck, but it would stop them. We staggered toward the concrete building. It was a bunker. No windows, one heavy steel door. There was a keypad next to the door. The red light on it was dead. "Power's out to the lock," I said. "The light on the tower is flashing," Maya argued. "There has to be power." "Different circuit," I said. I tried the handle. Locked. I pounded on the steel. "Hello? Is anyone in there? Open up!" My voice was snatched away by the wind. "Elias," Maya whispered. She grabbed my arm. "Look." She pointed to the snow near the corner of the building. There were footprints, not the dragging, shuffling tracks of the infected. These were boot prints, clean, purposeful. They led around the side of the building to the back. We followed them. On the back wall of the bunker there was an air intake vent. The heavy grate had been removed, unscrewed neatly, and leaned against the wall. The duct behind it was open. "Someone got in," I said, "recently." The duct was tight, maybe 3 feet square. I went first, crawling into the metal throat of the building. It was warmer inside. The air smelled of ozone, hot electronics, and something metallic, iron. I crawled about 10 feet and dropped down into a utility room. I helped Maya down. We were inside. The room was lit by the faint green glow of server LEDs. Banks of equipment lined the walls, humming softly. The heat was incredible. It felt like paradise. Maya collapsed against a rack of servers, sliding to the floor. "We're safe. Oh my God, we're safe." I didn't sit down. The hair on the back of my neck was standing up. "Stay here," I whispered. I walked out of the server room into a short concrete hallway. There was a door at the end, slightly ajar. Light spilled out from it, warm, yellow, incandescent light. I pushed the door open. It was a living quarters, a small break room with a cot, a kitchenette, and a desk covered in monitors, and a chair, a swivel chair, facing away from me, toward the screens. "Hello?" I called. The chair didn't move. I walked around the desk. "Oh," I breathed. A man was sitting in the chair. He was wearing a technician's uniform with a Midwest Telecom patch. He had a headset around his neck. He was dead. There was a pistol on the desk and a hole in the side of his head. The blood had dried on the floor, tacky and dark. "Elias?" Maya called from the hallway. "Did you find someone?" "Don't come in here," I said quickly. I grabbed a blanket from the cot and threw it over the man in the chair. "Who is it?" Maya appeared in the doorway. She stopped. She saw the blood on the floor. She saw the gun. "He checked out," I said quietly. "He saw what was happening and he—" I picked up the gun, a 9mm Beretta. The magazine was full, except for 1 round. I checked the safety and tucked it into my waistband. "Why?" Maya asked, her voice trembling. "He was safe here. He had heat. He had power. Why would he do this?" I looked at the monitors he had been watching.
There were 4 screens. 3 of them showed static, but the 4th screen was active. It was displaying a map of the United States. The map was covered in red dots, thousands of them. But that wasn't what drew my eye. It was the chat window open on the side of the screen, an instant messenger program connected to a dedicated hardline. The user ID was central_command_04. The last message sent from this terminal, from the dead man, was timestamped 4 hours ago. It read, Sector 4 secure, tower active, no contact with local law enforcement, requesting extraction. There was a reply, timestamped 3 minutes later. Central_command_04. Extraction denied. Containment Protocol 7 is in effect. Seal the facility. Do not exit. Do not allow entry. Good luck. Then, a string of messages below that one, sent from the technician. My wife is in Omaha. Is Omaha secure? Please respond. Is Omaha secure? Central? And then the final message from Central, sent 1 minute before the technician pulled the trigger. Central_command_04. Omaha is compromised. Salt Lake is compromised. Denver is compromised. There are no safe zones. Hold position. I stared at the screen. The text was glowing, burning into my retinas. What does it say? Maya asked, stepping closer. I blocked the screen with my body. Nothing, just technical stuff. I couldn't tell her. Not yet. She had just watched her father die. She had just survived the freezer and the fire. Hope was the only thing keeping her upright. If I told her that Denver, our destination, our hope, was gone, she would break. Look, I said, pointing to a different piece of equipment on the desk. A microphone. She was broadcasting. That's why the light was flashing. It's a repeater. I sat in the dead man's chair, careful not to touch the blanket, and put on the headset. The channel was open. It was set to a wideband emergency frequency. This is Elias, transmitting from relay station 412. Is anyone receiving? Static. I waited. Then, a voice. It wasn't Central Command. It wasn't a trucker. It was a child. Hello? Is someone there? My mom is sick. She won't wake up. I pressed the transmit button. I hear you. Where are you? I'm in the closet, the child whispered. I'm in the closet, and Daddy is making the clicking sound. My blood ran cold. The clicking. Listen to me. What is your location? I'm at the signal cut out. A blast of interference. Then a new voice cut in. A synthesized robotic voice, the same one that had called the store phone. Unauthorized transmission detected. Signal triangulation complete. Asset deployed. Asset? Maya asked. What does that mean? Thump. A heavy impact shook the steel door of the bunker. We both jumped. Thump! It wasn't a fist. It was metal. Heavy metal. I looked at the security feed monitor, the one I thought was dead static. It flickered to life. A black and white view of the front gate. The snowmobile I had jammed into the gate was gone, crushed flat. Standing in the courtyard, bathed in the amber light of the tower strobe, was the snowplow. Sal had found the access road. He had climbed the hill, but he wasn't in the truck. Sal was standing in front of the bunker door. He was holding something. I leaned closer to the screen. He was holding a sledgehammer, and he wasn't alone. From the back of the plow's salt hopper, figures were climbing out. They had hitched a ride. The pack. They stood in a semicircle around the door. Sal looked up at the security camera. He raised the sledgehammer.
and he smiled.
There is nowhere to hide in a 10 by 10 concrete box when a sledgehammer is at work on the only door. Clang! The sound was physical. It hit the inside of my chest like a kick drum. Dust rained down from the fluorescent light fixtures. The dead technician in the corner seemed to vibrate in his chair with every impact. Clang! He's hitting the hinges, I said, my voice sounding distant in my own ears. He's not trying to break the lock, he's shearing the pins. Maya was backed into the corner, knees pulled to her chest, hands over her ears. She was staring at the steel door. With every hit, the metal warped slightly. A fine line of gray paint flaked off the frame. I checked the Beretta again, safety off. 1 in the chamber, 14 in the magazine. Maya, listen to me, I shouted over the noise. If that door opens, you get behind the desk. Do not stand up. She nodded, tears streaming down her face, but her eyes were locked on me. She was terrified, but she was listening. I moved to the hallway entrance. I needed a choke point. If Sal got through the outer door, he'd have to come down the short corridor to get to us. That was my kill zone. Clang! The top hinge popped. We heard the distinct ping of sheared steel flying across the entry room. The door groaned, sagging inward at the top, creating a gap of darkness. Through the gap, I heard it, the clicking. Click, 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 click. But it wasn't just Sal, it was a chorus. The pack was out there, crowding around him, waiting for the dinner bell. I raised the gun, my hands were steady. I don't know why, maybe because I was already dead. When you accept that you're dead, the shaking stops. But then the hammering stopped. Silence rushed back into the room, heavy and suffocating. Why did he stop? Maya whispered. I didn't answer. I kept the sights trained on the door. Then a voice. It didn't come from the door. It came from the computer speakers behind me. Asset on site. Target acquisition verified. Containment mode active. The voice was that same robotic, synthesized tone. I glanced back at the monitor. The map of the U.S. was gone. In its place was a live video feed. It was an aerial view, thermal imaging, black and white. It was looking down at us. I saw the square outline of the bunker. I saw the heat signature of the snowplow. I saw the dozens of glowing white shapes clustered around the door, the infected. And then I saw a new shape. It wasn't a person. It was massive, a quad-rotor drone, hovering silently above the tower. On the thermal feed, its rotors were cool, blending into the sky, but its core was hot. "Get down!" I screamed. I didn't know what it was, but I knew what containment meant. I tackled Maya, dragging her under the heavy steel desk, just as the world turned white. Boom. It wasn't a bomb. It was a kinetic strike. Something moving at incredible speed slammed into the ground just outside the bunker. The concrete floor buckled. The monitors shattered. The dead technician was thrown from his chair, his body landing in a heap next to us. Dust choked the air. The emergency lights flickered and died, plunging us into total darkness. Then the screaming started outside. It wasn't the clicking sound. It was genuine biological pain, the sound of bodies being torn apart. We heard the whir, whir, whir of the minigun spinning up. Bert! The sound was like canvas ripping, amplified 1,000 times. The heavy machine gun fire chewed through the snowplow, the fence, and the bodies outside. "They're killing them!" Maya gasped, coughing in the dust. "The military, they're saving us!" I grabbed her arm. "Look at the door." I shone my flashlight down the hallway. The blast had blown the steel door off its remaining hinge. It was lying flat in the entry room. Sal was gone. The pack was gone. But standing in the doorway, framed by the swirling snow and the muzzle flashes from the drone above, was a machine. It wasn't the drone. The drone was air support. This was the ground unit. It looked like a dog, but wrong. Big dog dynamics, but armored. 4 hydraulic legs, a sensor cluster for a head, and a mounted weapon system on its back. It stepped over the fallen steel door with a mechanical whir clack. It scanned the room with a blue laser grid. "Biological signatures detected," the machine announced. Its voice was the same one from the phone. "Potential carriers identified. Sanitize." "It's not saving us," I realized, the horror washing over me colder than the snow. "It's cleaning the site." The machine lowered its front chassis, prepping to fire. "Run!" I grabbed the heavy oak desk and flipped it on its side, creating a makeshift barricade. Pop, pop, pop! 3 rounds punched through the desk, showering us in wood splinters. They weren't lead bullets. They were high-velocity penetrators. "The vent!" I yelled. "Go back out the vent!" "We can't go out there!" Maya screamed. "The drone! The drone is targeting the infected outside. This thing is hunting us." I stood up and fired the Beretta. Bang, bang, bang. The sounds were deafening in the small room. I aimed for the sensor cluster on the robot dog. Sparks flew. The machine staggered, its leg servo whining as it corrected its balance. I had blinded one of its cameras. It let out a digitized screech. "Go! Go!" I shoved Maya toward the utility room where the vent was. She scrambled up the server rack and dove into the duct. I fired 3 more shots to keep the machine's head down, then turned and sprinted after her. I heard the machine's hydraulic claws clicking on the concrete floor behind me. It was fast. I vaulted onto the server rack and pulled myself into the vent. As I dragged my legs in, I felt a rush of air. Click! The machine's jaws, a hydraulic clamp designed to crush bone, snapped shut inches from my boot, taking a chunk out of the metal ductwork instead. I scrambled backwards, pushing Maya ahead of me. "Move! Keep moving!" We crawled through the dark tunnel. Behind us, the machine was tearing at the wall, ripping the ventilation shaft apart to get to us. We fell out of the vent on the backside of the bunker, landing in the snow. The scene outside was an apocalypse. The strobe light on the tower was still flashing, illuminating the carnage. The snow was black with soot and red with blood. The snowplow was a burning wreck, riddled with holes. Bodies of the infected lay everywhere. They weren't moving. The minigun had done its job. Above us, the quad-rotor drone was circling, its spotlight sweeping the perimeter. "If that light touches us, we're dead," I said. "Stay in the shadow of the building." We hugged the concrete wall, shivering violently. "Where do we go?" Maya asked. She was barely holding it together. Her face was smeared with soot and blood that wasn't hers. I looked at the tower. The drone was hovering near the top. "The guy wires," I said. "Look." The tower was anchored by thick steel cables that ran down the steep backside of the hill, disappearing into the tree line of the valley below. The drone was focusing on the compound and the access road. It wasn't looking at the steep drop-off behind the bunker. "We have to slide down?" Maya looked at the cable. It was iced over. "We can't slide," I said. "We walk under it. Use the cable as a guide. The trees are thick down there. If we get into the timber, the thermal cameras won't see us as clearly." We moved to the edge of the drop-off. It was a 40-degree slope, covered in deep snow and jagged rocks. I looked back at the bunker one last time. The mechanical dog burst through the rear wall of the building, erupting from the vent hole in a shower of concrete dust. It saw us. Its sensor eye glowed red.
Targets acquired. It raised its weapon mount. I didn't think. I raised the Beretta and fired my last 7 rounds. I didn't aim for the robot. I aimed for the propane regulator on the side of the bunker, the backup fuel supply for the generator. Ping, ping, clang. The 3rd shot hit the valve. Gas spewed out directly into the face of the charging robot. The robot fired its weapon. The muzzle flash ignited the gas. Kaboom! The back wall of the bunker disintegrated. The shock wave threw us off the cliff edge. I didn't run. I fell. We tumbled down the steep embankment, rolling through snow, crashing through brush. The world became a blur of white, black, and pain. I hit a tree trunk, knocking the wind out of me. I spun, grabbed a root, and slid another 20 feet before coming to a stop in a snowbank. I lay there, staring up at the sky. The bunker was burning. The robot was buried under the rubble. Above the fire, the drone circled once, confused by the massive heat bloom of the explosion masking our thermal signatures. It hovered for a moment, then turned and flew east, back toward the highway. I listened. Silence. No wind. No clicking. No mechanical whirring. "Maya?" I whispered. A mound of snow 10 feet away shifted. Maya sat up, clutching her shoulder. She nodded. She was alive. We were in the valley floor now. The wind was blocked by the ridge. It was deadly quiet. We were alive, but we had nothing. No snowmobile, no shelter. The gun was empty. I dropped the magazine into the snow and racked the slide. Empty. I put the useless gun back in my belt anyway. "Elias," Maya said softly. She was holding something. It was the technician's headset. She must have grabbed it when we ran. The cord was snapped, dangling uselessly. "Why?" she asked. "Why did it try to kill us? We aren't sick." I looked at the burning bunker up on the hill. "Because we saw it," I said. "The technician, he wasn't killed by the infected. He killed himself because he saw the map, and the asset, the drone, it wasn't there to save the tower. It was there to erase the data." "What data?" "The triangulation," I remembered the robot's voice. "The signal didn't attract the infected by accident, Maya. The tower was broadcasting a lure. They were herding them." Maya stared at me. "Herding them where?" I looked east toward the endless dark of the plains. "I don't know," I said, "but we are not going to Denver." "Then where?" I pointed north, toward the tree line, toward the deep woods where no tower traps stood. "We go dark," I said. "We stop looking for rescue. Rescue is just another word for cleanup." I stood up and offered her my hand. She took it. Her grip was stronger now. The fear was still there, but the shock was gone. We turned our backs on the burning tower and walked into the trees. That was 3 days ago. We're still moving. We found a hunting cabin yesterday. Empty. Some canned food, a wood stove. I found a radio in the cabin, a shortwave receiver. I've been listening. There are others, voices in the static, not the clicking ones. Real people, hiding in basements, in attics, in trucks stalled on back roads. They're telling stories, stories about the cleanup crews, stories about the towers singing in the night. I'm recording this on an old cassette deck I found in the cabin. I'm going to leave this tape here. Maybe someone will find it. Maybe you. If you are listening to this, stay away from the flashing lights. Stay away from the towers. The world didn't end. It was turned off, and now something else is trying to log in. My name is Elias. This is the end of the Red Creek logs. We're moving north.